The massive lunar lander shuddered as it descended towards the moon's cratered surface. Inside, Captain Sarah Chen gripped her seat tightly, her knuckles white beneath her spacesuit gloves. The rest of her five-person crew sat in tense silence, their eyes fixed on the flickering monitors. "Altitude 500 meters," announced Dr. Mike Rodriguez, the mission's lead scientist. His voice wavered slightly, betraying the anxiety they all felt. This was supposed to be a routine mission. Set up a small research base, conduct some experiments, and return home in 3 months. But as the lander drew closer to its landing site, it became clear that something was terribly wrong. Alarms blared throughout the cabin. Red warning lights flashed on every console. The craft lurched violently to one side. "We're losing stability," shouted Lieutenant Alex Kovacs, the pilot. His hands flew over the controls, desperately trying to correct their course. "The primary thrusters are failing." Captain Chen's mind raced. They were coming in too fast. If they couldn't slow down, the impact would be catastrophic. "Backup systems online," called out Dr. Emily Sato, the engineer. "But they're not responding properly. Something's interfering with our systems." The moon's barren landscape loomed larger in the viewports. Jagged rocks and deep craters rushed up to meet them. "Brace for impact," Chen yelled. The crew had only seconds to tighten their harnesses before the lander slammed into the lunar surface. Metal screamed and twisted. Equipment tore loose from its moorings, flying across the cabin. A shower of sparks erupted from the control panels. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of escaping air and the crackle of electrical shorts. Acrid smoke filled the cabin, stinging their eyes even through their helmet visors. "Sound off," Chen croaked, fighting to catch her breath. "Is everyone okay?" One by one, her crew responded. They were battered and bruised, but miraculously, no one seemed seriously hurt. As the smoke began to clear, they took stock of their situation. The lander was a wreck. Their communication systems were down. Half their supplies were damaged or destroyed. And they were stranded on the lunar surface, 384,400 kilometers from home. "What happened?" asked Sergeant Chris Walker, the security officer. He was already checking the integrity of their spacesuits, preparing for an emergency evacuation if necessary. Dr. Rodriguez shook his head, bewildered. "I don't understand. All our systems were functioning perfectly until the final approach. It's like something just reached out and swatted us from the sky." Captain Chen unstrapped herself and carefully made her way to a viewport. The lander had come to rest at the edge of a large crater. In the distance, she could see their intended landing site, a flat plain that now seemed mockingly peaceful. "First things first," she said, turning back to her crew. "We need to assess the damage, see if we can get communications back online. Emily, Chris, suit up and do an exterior check. Mike, Alex, see what you can salvage from our equipment and supplies." As her team sprang into action, Chen couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Something about this crash didn't add up. The moon was supposed to be a dead world, airless, lifeless. So what could have interfered with their systems so dramatically? Outside, Emily and Chris carefully picked their way around the twisted wreckage of the lander. The lunar dust puffed up around their boots with each step, hanging briefly in the low gravity before settling back to the surface. "Captain," Emily's voice crackled over the radio. "You need to see this." Chen made her way to the airlock, stepping out onto the lunar surface. She followed Emily's pointing finger and froze. There, less than a kilometer away, was something that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist. A structure. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Sleek, alien curves rose from the dusty ground, shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. It pulsed with soft light, as if alive. That's not one of ours," Chris said, his voice barely above a whisper. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Their mission had just become far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. "No," she replied. "It's not ours at all." As they stood there, staring at the impossible sight, none of them noticed the faint tremor in the ground beneath their feet. None of them saw the tiny lights that began to blink on the alien structure, pulsing in an accelerating rhythm. Their crash landing hadn't gone unnoticed, and whatever called the moon home was stirring. The real adventure was about to begin. The lunar night was long and bitter. Inside the damaged lander, now serving as a makeshift shelter, the crew huddled together for warmth. Their emergency power systems were failing, and the cold of space was seeping in through the cracks in the hull. Captain Chen paced back and forth, her breath visible in the frigid air. "We need to make a decision," she said, addressing her team. "Our supplies won't last more than a week at this rate." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from the computer he was trying to repair. "What about rescue? Surely they'll send someone when we don't check in." Lieutenant Kovac shook his head. "Even if they launched immediately, it would take days for a rescue ship to reach us. We might not have that long." The alien structure loomed large in everyone's thoughts. They had spent the last 24 hours debating whether to approach it or not. The risks were enormous, but so were their chances of survival if they stay put. "I say we go for it," Sergeant Walker said, cleaning his plasma rifle. "That thing out there is our best shot at staying alive." Dr. Seto nodded in agreement. "He's right. The technology to build something like that. They might have the means to help us, or at least to boost our distress signal." Captain Chen considered their options. The military part of her screamed that it was too dangerous, that they should fortify their position and wait for rescue. But the explorer in her, the part that had driven her to become an astronaut in the first place, was intrigued by the mystery. "All right," she said finally. "We'll go, but we proceed with extreme caution. Any sign of hostility, we retreat immediately." "Understood." The crew nodded, a mix of fear and excitement on their faces. They spent the next few hours preparing. They packed what little supplies they could carry, charged their suit batteries, and did final checks on their equipment. As they worked, the alien structure seemed to pulse more brightly, as if aware of their decision. Just before they were ready to leave, Dr. Rodriguez made a startling discovery. "Captain," he called out, his voice filled with awe. "I've been analyzing the soil samples we collected. You're not going to believe this." Chen hurried over to his workstation. "What is it, Mike?" He pointed to his screen, which showed a microscopic image of the lunar dust. "Look closely. See those structures. They're organic compounds. Complex ones." The implications hit Chen like a punch to the gut. "Are you saying?" Rodriguez nodded, his eyes wide. "There's life here, or at least there was. These compounds don't form naturally in an environment like this. Something made them." The news sent a ripple of excitement and fear through the crew. They were no longer just exploring an alien structure. They were potentially making first contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. As they stepped out onto the lunar surface, the gravity of their situation became clear. 5 humans, alone on an alien world, about to confront the unknown. The structure stood before them, silent and mysterious. They began their trek across the dusty plain. Each step kicked up a small cloud of moon dust, which hung in the air longer than it would on Earth. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting long shadows across the crater-pocked landscape. Halfway to the structure, Sergeant Walker held up his hand, signaling the others to stop. "Movement," he said, pointing to a ridge about 200 meters away. They all turned to look. At first, they saw nothing. Then, a shape appeared at the top of the ridge. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Vaguely humanoid, but with too many limbs, moving with an otherworldly grace in the low gravity. The alien, for that's what it had to be, seemed to be watching them. It made no aggressive moves, but it didn't retreat either. Captain Chen's heart raced. This was it, the moment that would change human history forever. First contact. She took a deep breath and keyed her radio. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. We come in peace and seek your help." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, to everyone's shock, a voice responded. It was unlike any voice they had ever heard, yet somehow, they understood it perfectly. "We have been waiting for you," it said. "Come, there is much to discuss." The crew exchanged nervous glances. There was no turning back now. With cautious steps, they continued their approach, ready to face whatever awaited them in this new alien world. The alien led the human crew towards the shimmering structure. Up close, it was even more breathtaking. The surface seemed to ripple like water, reflecting the starry sky above. Captain Chen and her team approached with a mixture of awe and trepidation. As they neared the entrance, a section of the wall simply vanished, revealing a glowing corridor beyond. The alien gestured for them to enter. "Should we really go in there?" whispered Dr. Sato, her voice trembling slightly. Captain Chen took a deep breath. "We don't have much choice. Remember, we're here for help." They stepped inside, and the wall reappeared behind them. The corridor was bathed in a soft, blue light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The air inside was breathable, much to their surprise. "You may remove your helmets," the alien said, its voice resonating in their minds rather than their ears. "Our atmosphere is compatible with yours." Cautiously, they unsealed their helmets. The air was crisp and clean, with a slight metallic tang. The alien led them deeper into the structure. As they walked, they passed rooms filled with strange machines and glowing crystals. In one chamber, they saw what looked like a map of the galaxy, with thousands of tiny lights blinking across its surface. Finally, they entered a large, circular room. Other aliens were there, engaged in activities the humans couldn't begin to comprehend. They all turned to look at the newcomers, their multifaceted eyes gleaming with curiosity. One alien, seemingly older than the rest, approached them. "Welcome, visitors from Earth," it said. "We are the Lunari. We have watched your kind for a very long time." Captain Chen stepped forward. "Thank you for your welcome. We crashed on the moon and need assistance. Can you help us?" The elder Lunari tilted its head. "We can. But first, we must talk. Your arrival here was not an accident." This statement sent a shockwave through the human crew. Lieutenant Kovacs spoke up, his voice tinged with anger. "Are you saying you caused our crash?" "Not directly," the Lunari replied. "But we did influence your trajectory. It was necessary to bring you here." Dr. Rodriguez frowned. "But why? Why go to all this trouble?" The elder Lunari gestured to a large screen on the wall. It flickered to life, showing images of Earth. "Your world is in danger. The threat approaches that your people are not prepared to face." The screen showed a massive object moving through space, heading directly for Earth. It was planetoid in size, covered in strange, metallic structures. "What is that thing?" Sergeant Walker asked, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. "We call them the Harvesters," the Lunari explained. "They travel from world to world, stripping them of resources and leaving lifeless husks behind. They have destroyed countless civilizations, and now they have set their sights on your Earth." Captain Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "How long do we have?" "At their current speed, they will reach Earth in less than a year," the Lunari said. The human crew exchanged horrified glances. Their home, everything they knew, was in imminent danger. "But why us?" Dr. Sato asked. "Why bring our small team here? What can we possibly do against a threat like that?" The elder Lunari's eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Because, Dr. Sato, your team possesses a unique combination of skills and knowledge. Captain Chen's leadership, your engineering expertise, Dr. Rodriguez's scientific mind, Lieutenant Kovacs' piloting skills, and Sergeant Walker's combat experience. Together, you represent the best of humanity. We have technology that can help defend your world," the Lunari continued. "But we cannot directly intervene. It is against our most sacred laws. You must be the ones to take this knowledge back to Earth and prepare your people." Captain Chen straightened her back, a sense of determination filling her. "What do you need us to do?" The elder Lunari touched a crystal on a nearby console. A section of the floor opened up, revealing a small glowing orb. "This contains all the information you'll need. Plans for advanced weapons, shield technology, faster than light travel. Everything your world will need to stand a chance against the harvesters." As Chen reached for the orb, the Lunari added, "But be warned. This knowledge is powerful and dangerous. In the wrong hands, it could doom your world as surely as the harvesters. Choose wisely who you share it with." The weight of responsibility settled on Chen's shoulders. They had come to the moon seeking rescue. Instead, they had found a mission that would determine the fate of humanity. "We understand," she said, taking the orb. "We won't let you down. We won't let Earth down." The elder Lunari nodded solemnly. "Then let us begin. Time is short, and there is much you must learn before you return to your world." As the Lunari began to share their knowledge, the human crew steeled themselves for the challenges ahead. The future of Earth now rested in their hands. Days blended into weeks as the human crew immersed themselves in the advanced knowledge of the Lunari. Captain Chen and her team worked tirelessly, absorbing information that would have taken Earth scientists centuries to discover on their own. Dr. Rodriguez spent hours poring over holographic displays of alien technology, his eyes wide with wonder. "This is incredible," he muttered, studying a diagram of a fusion reactor that could power entire cities. "With this, we could solve Earth's energy crisis overnight." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Kovacs was learning to pilot Lunari spacecraft in a virtual simulator. The ships moved in ways that defied human understanding of physics, effortlessly crossing vast distances in the blink of an eye. "It's like nothing I've ever flown before," Kovacs said, his hands dancing over the alien controls. "It doesn't just travel through space, it bends space around it." Sergeant Walker focused on weapons and defensive systems. The Lunari showed him how to create force fields that could withstand the impact of asteroids and energy weapons that could slice through the toughest materials known to man. Dr. Sato worked on understanding the Lunari's advanced AI systems. "Their computers don't just process information," she explained to the others during a rare break. "They actually think and reason. It's like they're alive." As for Captain Chen, she split her time between all areas, trying to grasp the big picture. She knew that when they returned to Earth, she would be responsible for convincing world leaders to take the threat seriously and implement the Lunari's technology. One day, as Chen was studying a map of known harvester attack patterns, the elder Lunari approached her. "You seem troubled, Captain," it said. Chen sighed. "I'm worried about what will happen when we return to Earth. Will they believe us? And even if they do, can we really prepare an entire planet for this threat in less than a year?" The Lunari placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Its touch was surprisingly warm. "Have faith in your people, Captain. Humans have a remarkable capacity for adaptation and growth. We have seen it many times throughout your history." Chen nodded, grateful for the encouragement. But a new thought struck her. "You said you've been watching us for a long time. Why didn't you warn us about the harvesters sooner?" The elder Lunari's eyes dimmed slightly. "We have a strict policy of non-interference with developing civilizations. It is only when a species reaches a certain technological threshold that we are permitted to make contact. Your recent advancements in space travel finally opened that door." Before Chen could respond, an alarm blared throughout the Lunari structure. Red lights pulsed along the walls, and Lunari rushed past them with urgent purpose. "What's happening?" Chen asked, her heart racing. The elder Lunari's voice was grim. "The harvesters, they've changed course. They're moving faster than we anticipated." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "How much time do we have?" "At their new speed, they will reach Earth in 6 months." The news hit Chen like a physical blow. 6 months. Half the time they thought they had. She quickly gathered her crew, relaying the dire update. "We need to leave now," she said, her voice firm with resolve. "Earth needs to start preparing immediately." The Lunari agreed. They quickly loaded the humans' lander with advanced technology and data crystals containing vital information. As the crew prepared to depart, the elder Lunari approached them one last time. "Remember," it said, its voice echoing in their minds, "the fate of your world now rests in your hands. Use our gifts wisely, and you may yet survive the coming storm." With heavy hearts and determined minds, the crew boarded their upgraded lander. The Lunari technology hummed to life, systems far beyond human understanding guiding their craft. As they rose from the lunar surface, they took one last look at the shimmering Lunari structure. It began to fade from view, camouflaging itself once more against the moon's barren landscape. "Next stop, Earth," Kovacs said, his hand steady on the new controls. Captain Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on the blue marble hanging in the void before them. Their home, the world they now had to save. "Let's just hope we're not too late," she said softly. The lander accelerated, streaking across space at impossible speeds. The greatest challenge of human history awaited them. The clock was ticking, and Earth remained blissfully unaware of the danger hurtling towards it from the depths of space. Here's the fifth part of your story, written in approximately 670 words, using simple English and third-person style. The lander streaked through Earth's atmosphere, its Lunari-enhanced shields glowing bright against the heat of re-entry. Inside, Captain Chen and her crew braced themselves for impact. They were about to change the course of human history. As they approached the surface, chaos erupted on the ground below. Radar stations across the globe lit up with warnings. Fighter jets scrambled, racing to intercept the unknown craft, descending at impossible speeds. "This is going to be a rough landing," Lieutenant Kovacs warned, his hands dancing over the alien controls. The lander touched down in a remote field, leaving a deep furrow in the earth. Immediately, they were surrounded by military vehicles and armed soldiers, their weapons trained on the craft. "Here we go," Chen said, taking a deep breath. "Remember, we're here to save them, not fight them." They stepped out of the lander with their hands raised. The soldiers tensed, fingers on triggers. A stern-looking general approached, flanked by heavily armed guards. "Identify yourselves immediately," he barked. Captain Chen stepped forward. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen, and this is my crew. We were on a lunar mission, but something happened. Something big. We need to speak with world leaders right away." The general's eyes narrowed. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of debriefings, meetings, and heated arguments. Captain Chen and her crew found themselves at the center of a global storm. World leaders gathered in emergency sessions, scientists pored over the alien technology, and military strategists planned for the unthinkable. At first, many doubted their story. The idea of an alien threat seemed too fantastical. But as the Lunari technology was examined and verified, the truth became impossible to ignore. In a secure underground facility, Chen stood before a wall of screens, each showing the face of a different world leader. She had just finished presenting the Lunari's warning and their plan for Earth's defense. "This is preposterous," the Russian president scoffed. "You expect us to believe this fairy tale and hand over control of our military to some unified Earth defense force?" The Chinese premier nodded in agreement. "How do we know this isn't some elaborate hoax, a ploy for certain nations to seize power?" Chen felt her patience wearing thin. "With all due respect, we don't have time for politics. The harvesters will be here in less than 6 months. If we don't work together, there won't be an Earth left to govern." The U.S. president leaned forward, her face grave. "Captain Chen is right. We've all seen the evidence. The threat is real, and we need to act now." Slowly, painfully, consensus began to form. A global defense initiative was established, with Chen and her crew at its head. They worked around the clock, overseeing the implementation of Lunari technology and training Earth's best and brightest to use it. Dr. Rodriguez led teams of scientists in reverse engineering the alien tech. They made breakthroughs in energy production, materials science, and propulsion that advanced human technology by centuries in a matter of months. Lieutenant Kovacs trained an elite corps of pilots to fly the new, Lunari-inspired spacecraft. They practiced combat maneuvers that would have been impossible with Earth's previous level of technology. Sergeant Walker worked with military forces worldwide, integrating the new weapons and defense systems into existing frameworks. The power at their disposal was staggering, but he knew they'd need every advantage against the harvesters. Dr. Sato focused on upgrading Earth's computer systems and satellite networks. She created an AI-driven early warning system that could detect and track threats across the solar system. As for Captain Chen, she found herself thrust into the role of Earth's defender. She coordinated the global response, mediated disputes between nations, and tried to prepare humanity for the battle to come. 4 months into their preparations, as Chen was reviewing defense plans in her office, Dr. Sato burst in, her face pale. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, pulling up a holographic display. Chen's heart sank as she saw the image. A massive object, easily the size of the moon, was moving through the outer solar system. The harvester had arrived early. "How long?" Chen asked, her voice barely a whisper. "At its current speed, 2 weeks," Sato replied. "Maybe less." Chen closed her eyes, taking a moment to steady herself. Then she straightened, her resolve hardening. "Alert all commands," she ordered. "Tell them this is not a drill. The harvester is here." As alarms began to sound across the globe, Chen looked out her window at the bustling activity below. Massive ships were under construction, soldiers trained with energy weapons, and shield generators were being installed in major cities. They had made incredible progress, but was it enough? Had they done all they could to prepare? As if sensing her doubts, Dr. Sato placed a hand on Chen's shoulder. "We've done everything we can, Captain. Now it's time to fight." Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Somewhere out there, beyond the blue sky, an unimaginable threat was bearing down on them. The greatest battle in Earth's history was about to begin. "May the stars help us all," Chen muttered, then turned to face the challenges ahead. The fate of humanity now hung in the balance, and she was determined to give them a fighting chance. The sky burned. Massive harvester ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot from the entry. Earth's newly built defense fleet rose to meet them, led by Lieutenant Kovacs in the flagship, Horizon. On the ground, Captain Chen coordinated the global response from a fortified command center. Holographic displays showed battles raging across the planet and in orbit. "Sector 7 is under heavy attack." A voice crackled over the comms. "We need reinforcements." Chen's fingers flew over the controls, redirecting forces. "Kovacs, can you spare any ships for Sector 7? "Negative, Captain," Kovacs replied, his voice strained. "We're barely holding our own up here." The battle raged for days. Earth's forces fought valiantly, their Lunari-enhanced weapons proving effective against the harvesters. But the alien invaders seemed endless, wave after wave descending from their massive mothership. Dr. Rodriguez burst into the command center, his eyes wild with excitement. "Captain, I think I've found something." He pulled up a 3D model of the harvester mothership. "See this structure here? It's generating some kind of quantum field. I think it's how they're coordinating their forces." Chen's eyes widened as she realized the implications. "If we can take that out, we might be able to disrupt their entire fleet," Rodriguez finished. It was a slim chance, but it was all they had. Chen quickly formulated a plan. "Kovacs, do you read me?" she called over the comms. "Loud and clear, Captain," came the reply. "We're sending you coordinates for a strike on the mothership. It's a long shot, but it's our best chance." There was a pause before Kovacs responded. "Understood. We'll give it everything we've got." Chen turned to Sergeant Walker. "I need you to lead a ground team. Once Kovacs creates an opening, you'll board the mothership and plant charges on that structure. Walker nodded grimly. Consider it done, Captain. As the plan was set in motion, Dr. Sato approached Chen. Captain, I've been analyzing the Harvester's communication patterns. I think I can send them a message. Chen frowned. What kind of message? A virus, Sato replied. If we can get it into their systems, it might buy us some time. Do it, Chen ordered. The next hours were the most intense of Chen's life. She watched as Kovacs led a daring assault on the mothership, his ships darting between massive energy beams and waves of smaller craft. We've breached their outer defenses, Kovacs shouted. Walker, you're clear for insertion. On another screen, Chen saw Walker's team racing through the alien corridors, fighting off Harvester drones as they planted their charges. Charges set. Walker's voice came through, breathless. Evacuating now. Meanwhile, Sato worked feverishly at her console, her fingers a blur as she launched her digital attack. Virus deployed, she announced. It's working. Their systems are slowing down. Chen held her breath as she watched Walker's team escape and Kovacs' ships retreat to a safe distance. Time seemed to stand still. Then suddenly, a blinding flash lit up the sky. A Harvester mothership shuddered, massive explosions rippling across its surface. Smaller ships began to fall from the sky, their coordination lost. A cheer went up in the command center, but Chen knew it wasn't over yet. All units, press the advantage, she ordered. Don't let up until every last Harvester is gone from our skies. The battle raged on for hours more, but the tide had turned. Without their central coordination, the Harvester forces fell into disarray. Earth's defenders, emboldened by their success, fought with renewed vigor. As the last Harvester ship fell from the sky, an eerie silence settled over the planet. Chen stepped outside the command center, looking up at the smoke-filled sky. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and burning metal. Slowly, people began to emerge from shelters, looking around in wonder at the devastation and at their salvation. A battered but triumphant Kovacs landed nearby, joining Chen. We did it, Captain, he said, his voice filled with awe. We actually did it. Chen nodded, a small smile on her face. We had help, she said, thinking of the Lunari. But in the end, it was humanity that rose to the challenge. As the sun began to rise on a new day, Chen knew that nothing would ever be the same. Earth had faced its greatest threat and survived. They had seen wonders and horrors beyond imagination. But most importantly, they had learned that they were not alone in the universe, and that together, they could overcome anything. The dawn of a new era for humanity had begun.